DJ and PK, it is 97.5 The Zone, and it is time to talk football with Riley Jensen, former Aggie quarterback, now working with coaching people up on the mental performance side of football, which makes him perfect for this segment. Riley, good morning.
Hey, what's happening, you sorry dudes?
Well, the NFL draft is coming up, which means the Jets finally had to take their best deal. I'm sure they were just shopping, trying to get better deals forever. And they're able to trade Zach Wilson, but they have to pay half a salary. And what do they get for him? They get to move up one round in the draft. They get a sixth-round pick, but they have to give up a seventh. So they don't get a lot for him. Most of the league doesn't see a lot of value, but I think the league also knew the Jets had to move him and they had no leverage. Now, somewhere is the truth about who Zach Wilson is and what he's going to be. But when PK and I have talked about this over time, the thing I keep coming back to is whatever Riley's about to tell us about the throwing motion and the arm slot and the decisions and the footwork and all that, the thing I see when he is in New York is a place where one or two quarterbacks have been successful in 50 years. So it's like 100 seasons of football. They want it so bad. I guess you could probably say there's been 3 or 4 quarterbacks who've been successful there, but the vast majority have not been. They want it so bad. It's been so long since they've won. They beat people up immediately before they're ready to win, and then you see it in Zach's body language. I see him walking back to the huddle thinking, why am I going to watch the third quarter of this game? I'm in the second quarter of this game, and he's beaten down, and they're not going to do it. That's not how Zach Wilson walks when he's playing well, because I've seen him play well in high school and college. And I can tell, how do you rebuild that? Because it seems like if they don't rebuild that, the Broncos are never going to get anything out of him.
Well, I heard you guys talking earlier about, Steve Young and his thoughts, and about how he said that there's parts that the Jets need to own and there's parts that Zach need to own. Yeah. And I think best case scenario for Zach is what happened with Steve Young in Tampa Bay and San Francisco 49ers. So I assume that those phone lines are open, and that they're communicating. Here's what I'll tell you, and this is really hard for me because over my career, I've worked with a lot of quarterbacks. I still work with a lot of quarterbacks, and my eye is consistently like trying to find the faults in a quarterback, and it's part of what I hate and what I love about playing the quarterback position and coaching the quarterback position is that I'm constantly pretty critical of, footwork, of mentality, of all those kind of things. When Zach Wilson got picked by the New York Jets, my first instinct was, oh no. And the reason why is because the organization has never been good, just like you brought up. They've never been supportive of quarterbacks, and he had a defensive coordinator who although he had come from the Shanahan line, defensive coaches and offensive coaches just look at quarterbacks different. They do. I mean, if you go talk to Kyle Whittingham, you go talk to Kalani Sitake, and you go talk to Blake Anderson, you're going to have 3 very distinct and different views about the quarterback position from those 3 different guys. And that's okay. But if you want to play well, especially early in your career in the NFL, you need some support there, and you need some rope to make mistakes. And so I personally am really, really excited about what he can do. There was times, and there were some. It was actually kind of funny. I can't remember the name of the person that I follow that followed the Jets, but he's like, hey, tell me where you would throw right here. And I would watch from behind, and it was like the game time film. It felt like me playing quarterback at Utah State all over again. You're talking about guys that are blanketed on every single wide receiver. There's 2 free guys coming up through the middle, and there's nowhere to throw the ball. And I don't care how good of an athlete you are. I don't care how good your footwork is. I don't care how strong your arm is. If people aren't open, they're not open. And I saw that over and over and over again with the Jets. Now, people want Aaron Rodgers to come in and save that. We'll see if that's even possible. But to me, that was a difficult situation, and I'm really looking forward to him having a new start. Not only a new start, but with an offensive coach who has a history of making guys better in that position. I mean, whatever you want to say about the last Wilson that was at Denver Broncos, he played better this year than he had. Obviously, Drew Brees played better. He was a great quarterback for him, and so I'm looking forward to this. You've got journeyman Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci that are there. Possibility of a draft pick of Bo Nix. It looks like it's a good situation for Zach to just restart and refresh and kind of get some of that body language back that you were talking about.
We know success breeds confidence, right? And confidence breeds success. It's sort of a circular thing there. But what level of success do you need before you regain the swagger that Zach Wilson had?
That's a really good question. And I don't talk to Zach every day. I talk to his dad from time to time. I don't know how down he is. My personal thought is he's probably pretty down. It's probably the first time in his life that he really hasn't played the way that he thought he would. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not good. That just means it's probably not been a total joyful experience. What I think needs to happen is there probably needs to be 2 or 3 games with the Denver Broncos where he throws for over 250 yards with 2 or 3 touchdowns and a 3-to-1 interception to touchdown ratio or touchdown to interception ratio, to start feeling like, okay, dude, I belong. That's in the rearview mirror, and I've got to move forward. But I mean, there's no question that when psychologically, one of the things I learned when I went back to school that I think is really interesting is that your self-talk affects your swagger, right? So the way that you're talking to yourself, the way you feel about yourself affects your swagger. So when you're playing well, it's a pretty natural thing for you to walk with a little bit of swagger, to talk with swagger, to kind of exude that confidence that other guys need, that other guys on the team needs. But what Zach probably needs to do is work backwards from that, because I found out in school that not only does your self-talk affect your body language, but your body language has an equal relationship with your self-talk. And so I think he needs to start with his body language. I think he needs to start with a fresh start and with acting as if he's the man again. And I think if he does that, then little by little will become a lot, and then he can start feeling it and not just, they talk about fake it till you make it. I think the phrase that you need to use is fake it till you become it. And then once you become it, then it's easy, right? And he does need to get some of that swagger back, and he needs to get some of that. And that will come with some results that feel competent in his mind.
So I have just enough information to be dangerous on this next line of thinking, but I'm going to blurt out what I'm thinking, and then you can tweak whatever I say, fix whatever I say, wherever I blunder my way into some mistake. Watching Zach play at BYU, and with A-Rod there, when I've been around A-Rod, some guys need to be kicked in the butt and some guys need to be patted on the back. A-Rod strikes me as a guy who will snap and kick people in the butt. He will, but he trends more towards pat on the back guy.
Right.
And Zach flourished under that. Now, maybe that means something about Zach, maybe it doesn't. But I take that and then I go to the Jets, and that is just kick you in the butt nonstop from the fans and the media. I don't know what the coaching staff is like. Then I watch Sean Payton in Denver, and he's got a little bit of the Belichick-Parcells thing going, or he's got a lot of that going. And I think that's not what Zach needs. At the same time, you take Russell Wilson, who really struggled at the end in Seattle, was bad the first year in Denver. But despite the fact he had a lot of obvious conflict on the sideline with Peyton, his completion percentage went from 60 to 66%. That's a pretty healthy jump. His touchdowns went from 16 to 26. That's a pretty healthy jump. His interceptions dropped from 11 to 8. That's good, right? He had a 26 to 8. He threw 3 touchdowns for every pick. That's good. I don't know what about Russell Wilson's personality was making Sean Payton so mad, But when I see 66% completion and 3 touchdowns to 1 pick, I think you got a quarterback you can work with. Obviously, he didn't want to. And he's a pretty prickly guy himself. Is Peyton the right guy technically for Zach? And then is he the right guy personality-wise for Zach?
Well, first of all, I think one of the advantages that Zach has over Russell is that he's not bringing in his own personal assistant and demanding in his own office and his own assistant while he's there. So I think that will bode well for his relationship with him. But then also, I mean, I would argue back at you, I think A-Rod is a pat-on-the-back type of guy. And I think one of the best things that A-Rod did with Zach Wilson is he let Zach be Zach. But, I mean, you're sitting next to the guy that's best friends with Eric Kerr. I mean, Eric Kerr is as bristly and as difficult as anybody I've ever seen. And
we've seen it on TV. I've seen it on TV. I've seen him bark.
PK hangs out with him. I mean, ask PK. PK knows whether he can play for a tough guy or not. I think he played really well for Eric Kerr as well. And so I'm not sure that this is a personality as much as it was the weight of New York City, the weight of a bad organization. It's why I feel really optimistic for Zach right now. I think he can play for a guy that gets after him. I don't think he's fragile. I don't think he's fragile at all. And Eric Kerr can drop curse words and kind words with the best of them. And when you're in high school, I mean, people say, well, that's just high school. Well, that's your world in high school. That's everything, right? And so he played for him. I thought he played really well there. I think because this guy's an offensive guy, I think there's going to be a lot of trust for Zach in what he's telling him and what he's trying to get him to read and to look at. I just think this is a good trade. The only thing that would be a little bit better than this is if Zach could go somewhere and sit for a year and watch somebody like with the LA Rams. I'd heard that thrown around a lot. That would have been kind of fun for me to see him sit for a year, really just kind of like gain his bearings and be where he wants. Where I think in this situation, if Bo Nix is brought in and they've got Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci, I'm not looking at any of those names and going, man, Zach can't start there or Zach can't play there. I think he's going to get an opportunity to play. I think it might have been good if he could sit out for a year and just really take a deep breath and look and watch the speed of the game, learn a system under somebody else, and then really, really kind of step into a role.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that high school coach there, he'll challenge you. There was one time I was
He challenges me. Yeah. I talked to him, and he's like, hey, what the hell's going on here, Jensen? You know, and I'm like, geez, man, freaking calm down, Eric.
Yeah. There was a situation, they were killing somebody. It was at the end of the first half, and he wanted to run the 2-minute drill, and he was going to use it as practice in case it was a live game, but in case he needed it down the line, right? So he calls a couple plays. They run. The kid, instead of getting out of bounds, he cuts inside and gains about 2 yards. So he calls timeout. He tells them, okay, man, we're running the 2-minute drill. You want to get outside, blah, blah, blah. Next play, I don't remember if it's the same kid or another kid. Same thing. He's headed toward the sideline. Instead of going out, he cuts inside. And the person I'm sitting next to calls timeout, and I'm sitting next to somebody. I said, oh, you're going to like this. Watch this. So he calls timeout, brings the offense over, and I thought his head was literally going to explode. He had just told him, we're running the 2-minute drill. We don't need the 2 extra yards. We need the time. Get out of bounds. Exactly what he didn't do 2 plays in a row. And, oh, my gosh. I feared for the man's health. I thought that if I didn't realize that he works out 5 hours a day with his classes, I would have been a little nervous for him. So, yes, he can be very, very hard on that. But it's interesting you say about, you look at the roster of quarterbacks, and I looked it up to make sure I knew Stidham was there. That other kid, Leonardo da Vinci guy, I never even heard of him. So I'm wondering, is it good news or bad news if he ends up winning the job this year?
That's what I'm saying. That's the only better situation would have been if he was sitting behind somebody. But if he wins the job and there's somebody like Bo Nix behind him, I mean, it's another situation where just one bad game and everybody's calling for, it's like, I used to joke at BYU that the most popular guy on BYU's campus is the second string quarterback, right? And it'll be kind of the same thing if he wins the job. and they have a high-level draft pick behind him, that's just another level of pressure. But I also think, I mean, look, Eric Kerr is an unbelievable offensive coach, and he knew how to get quarterbacks' eyes in the right place. And I feel the same way about Sean Payton. I kind of feel like if Zach gets it here, it might be a good thing. I mean, it might be a really good thing to like restart and rebound from a career that started out different. Look, the best case scenario is Steve Young. The mid case scenario is Alex Smith, where it didn't start out great. There was lots of different offense coordinators. Still had a really, really solid career in the NFL. And then the worst case scenario is it just doesn't work out. So to me, two out of those three scenarios are really, really good for Zach. And listen, he has the talent, he has the ability, and I'm personally cheering for him. In a lot of ways, I'm cheering for him because it's been a long time since a player out of the state of Utah has been a starter in the NFL. I mean, maybe since Scott Mitchell, right? And it just would be really fun for a lot of the kids around here to be able to cheer on a guy that comes from a high school that they play against or play for. I just think that's good for the kids here in the state of Utah. So I'm personally cheering for him.
5 first-round draft picks in that were quarterbacks in that draft, and Zach Wilson is the 4th to be traded. Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick in Jacksonville, is the only guy still with the team that drafted him. So,
right, and I'm not sure Trevor Lawrence has been everything that we thought he was going to be. So it's hard work to play quarterback in the NFL. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to be mentally tough. You have to be physically good, and you also have to have the right situation. So hopefully this is the right situation for Zach.
Thanks, Riley. We appreciate it. You're the man.
Thanks, you guys. Love being on with you guys. I look forward to seeing you again.